Cheeto crust on them.
Yeah.
And you just kind of scrape it off.
Yeah, with your teeth like that.
Yeah.
Exactly like that. Okay, so you know what else is really funny about all of the like bullshit, like controversy we got on our page in the last couple of days? One of the big key points that a lot of these people were saying is like, you know, anytime anybody would ask them, oh, well, why don't you have before and after videos? Why don't you have before and after videos? They're all like, well, because we don't set up dogs to fail and, you know, make them walk right past another dog where they're going to react and blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. The dogs we work with, they fucking freak out and react if they even fucking hear a bag blow in the wind. Like, there's no needing to set them up for failure because they're fucking reacting at everything, right? Like, you walk them out your front door and they're reacting at something that they see. You walk them into a new public place and they're reacting at something that they see. They hear a weird noise outside of their house. They're fucking freaking out, reacting, trying to break out the window, right? Like, which further goes to show that they're just not working with the same caliber of dogs that we're working with. Follow-up question to that would be, are a lot of these dogs that you're working through with that kind of stuff, are they coming to you for like dog reactivity issues primarily, or are they coming to you for situations where like they've actually like attacked and injured other dogs, or would you say it's kind of a combination of the two? Yep. Yep. Yep, yep. And I would say that that's pretty standard with us as well. Like, the amount of dogs that we'll work with that have like what I would consider like really true dog aggression issues is far fewer than you would think, you know. And they exist for sure, and those are the ones that, you know, typically speaking, are going to be a little bit longer of a process with things than others. But it's typically not actually the case. So just kind of getting right into some of this kind of stuff, the biggest thing that's standing out to me, as far as a potential issue that I used to run into when I would kind of try to follow this type of approach, is we put almost too many parameters on the socialization experience with the other dogs. And a part of that could be because lack of amount of dogs you have to work with. A part of that could be the environment you're doing it in, obviously, where you're kind of needing to resort to some of the more slow introduction, doing it maybe out and about on the walk kind of setting, stuff like that, as opposed to like we have just an open area where we could have socialization happening. You know what I mean? And the way I've always looked at this kind of stuff is dog reactivity at its core, right, is typically a stem from our dogs having a extremely like hyperactive nervous system, and the more like constraints that we put on how they're socializing just builds up too much frustration. It bottles up and explodes into these big reactions, right? So, you know, the problem with doing some of the, okay, we're going to start with just making sure he's totally calm with other dogs, then we're going to progress to the side-by-side walk, then we're going to progress to allowing a little bit of sniffs here and there kind of while we're doing that kind of walking type of setting, you know, then we're going to progress to letting them interact but on the loose leash and stuff. Is if you look at some of these really reactive dogs at their core, when they play with other dogs, it's not going to be almost ever this calm thing that could take place within this like 10-foot radius. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times these dog reactive dogs that we're working with, when they first socialize, like that very first time, it's just this freaking explosion of energy, right? Where they're zipping around all over the place, they're jumping, they're running, they're playing, and because of their history of the reactivity that we're used to seeing out of them, if they even feel that slightest bit of tension, right, from a leash or whatever it may be, it kind of derails everything and sets it all off and just turns into that explosion they've been conditioned to from that leash, right? we've had obviously a lot of dogs, but like a couple in particular I can think of lately that we've worked with is we have this dog Lucy that's in from New York City, and same deal, dog super dog aggressive, super dog reactive, this, that. And she was reactive, right? Like she's your typical hyperactive, small little pocket pitty that just zips all over the place and very hard to kind of keep her under control and stuff like that. But the first time we let her off leash and just threw her in with a group of other dogs, there wasn't a hint of aggression there, right? Like she just was a freaking psychopath, basically, right? And she needed to kind of get some of that out of her system without us trying to micromanage it too much. You know what I mean? So my process for socializing dogs has basically been, yeah, no problem. So my process for socialization is, yes, your idea of like having the prerequisite of being able to keep our dog under calm, under control first is very important, right? We're not going to discredit that at all. I always say, we do want to just throw our dogs in with each other, but if we're doing that before we know that we could disengage them if there actually is a problem, we're kind of just going into it like fingers crossed, like I hope nothing happens, which is always a bad state of mind to be in, right? And naturally we have to take safety into play where if it's a dog that truly has or would have injured another dog, so one of your kind of 10 or 20% cases and stuff here, we have to use a muzzle or something like that, or assess, like, listen, like some of these dogs we work with that have injured other dogs before, it's been a situation where it's like on-leash greeting, suddenly the dogs are getting pulled away from each other and then they start reacting because they're so close, like a bite happens or something like that, and I don't know, I kind of chalk some of those situations up as like that's just a poor introduction, you know what I mean? And the dog likely probably didn't have any intention of actually harming the other dog. It was just, again, a poor introduction that led to it, right? But you do your best, to assess the situation and think like, do I actually think that there's a possibility something might happen? And if so, we implement a muzzle or something like that to get as best of a read off of it as possible. But I really separate my chill, neutral time with dogs from my socialization time, right? So I'm going to work exercises where the dog is neutral to the other dog. I'm going to work downstays around other dogs, leash walking past them, things like that. But when it's time to socialize, that's something completely separate for me, right? So we're essentially teaching the dog there's a time and a place for things, right? When we're out and about, when we're working commands, when I'm actively engaging with you, is never going to be the time you're going to interact with other dogs. So basically turn it off in your brain, right? And when we're actually going to go and do the socialization work, then at that point, it's all about you, right? I'm basically going to disconnect myself from the process and just supervise and play lifeguard at that point, right? And I'll tell you, like as we've continued to kind of like loosen up our parameters with like what we allow during socialization, we've seen the biggest breakthroughs with some of these dogs, right? So particularly the actual aggression cases, right? So like the ones that have injured other dogs in the past and stuff like that. I think we've had this mentality for a very long time in the dog training world now, where it's like, we almost try to we look at a dog that's stressed, right, for example, because another dog's pushing their buttons or this or that, and we look at that as the other dog's problem usually, you know what I mean? Like the dog that's pushing their boundaries, it's like, well, we need to step in and we need to intervene and we need to advocate and stuff like that, which, yes, if we're trying to manage the situation and just make sure there's not a problem, like that would be accurate, right? But we want to get that dog that's having the issue with the dog pushing their button to learn better coping mechanisms of how to handle those things and get them realizing, listen, it's okay for you to communicate that you're stressed out, right? It's okay for you to, communicate boundaries and stuff like that with other dogs. I'm not taking that away at all, but a lot of times what happens is if we're constantly stepping in before that dog has a chance to do it, or we're constantly stepping in and correcting them if they do show absolutely any hint of like negativity towards another dog, what I find is they wind up kind of bottling up those emotions, and you'll see a suppression in the behavior initially, right? They'll stop rehearsing some of those behaviors, but once like push comes to shove and they really can't hold it in anymore, it tends to be like a 10x bigger explosion on their end. You know what I mean? Which is where a lot of the worst fights that I see happen come from, right? Where some of these dogs that come in that have like really poor social skills, when we put them in the group and we, and we'll get into like how we categorize dogs and stuff like that and how I determine which dogs I use for these types of socialization, obviously. But when we put them into the group and say I have a dog, history of dog aggression, very, very uncomfortable around other dogs, and I take, say, 2 really, really balanced social dogs, right? That might kind of push their boundaries and stuff a little bit, but like when push comes to shove, they're not going to do anything. There's no risk or anything associated with it. What winds up happening is I'll put them in, and initially it's this explosion of energy from the dog with a history of dog aggression issues, either in a positive way or a negative way, right? Sometimes it's just like I said, they come in like a psychopath, and it's like they never got to open up ever in their life because everybody's like trying to stop it the second it started, which boiled over into a problem. Or they come in and they're hot, man. Like they're, you know, aggressively snapping at every dog that comes in their face. They're lunging, they're doing this, they're doing that. And like I was saying, as I've started to kind of step back and like because I put them with balanced enough dogs that can tolerate that, allow it to kind of just take place for a little bit, usually what we'll find is the dog will learn on their own, okay, cool, me doing this does work to an extent. I don't want to, you know, like I don't want to take away in their mind that creating a boundary doesn't work, you know what I mean? But they start realizing they can accomplish that same thing with less intensity and less intensity and less intensity over time, as they realize I don't need to start right away with this like level 11 correction on another dog. I could get away with a level 8 correction, and then I can get away with a level 7 correction, et cetera, until it starts turning into what I would consider to be an appropriate correction, right? And then once they realize they can still communicate, because if we're going to get the dog ultimately to play with other dogs, they have to feel like they can communicate still, right? Like we can't take away that, or else they'll never open up in a positive manner, right? But then they start realizing, okay, cool, as I get more comfortable, now they shift much more evenly into the play side of things, and they actually start interacting in a much more appropriate manner. And because they figured out on their own, without the need of my constant intervention, that they could also communicate boundaries in an appropriate way, as that play starts to intensify and they do wind up needing to give a boundary or something, it doesn't flip like a switch back into the aggression. You know what I mean? So that's really been a lot of it, is, you know, over the years as we've continued to get some of these breakthroughs with dogs, it has really stemmed from me doing less. You know what I mean? Like me really just putting in place the safety protocols, making sure I have enough communication on the dog where if I need to, I could step in and intervene. But trying like my absolute hardest to do nothing. You know what I mean? Because I truly believe that these dogs understand this stuff way better than we do. You know what I mean? And there's like, you know, obviously there's the age-old saying of like, you know, let them figure it out and this and that. And again, like I don't agree with that to an extent, because you have to have the environment set up so that they can figure it out, obviously, right? We're still doing stuff, but when it comes to their actual interaction, once we've set up the environment to be like a healthy place for them to socialize and interact in, I do think to some extent they do need to kind of just figure it out with each other. You know what I mean? And that's been our biggest breakthroughs that we've had lately, have come from just letting them do that. You know what I mean? And that, you know, a lot of the things as far as setting up the right environment, that really just comes down to making sure there's not any sort of like resources and stuff that would cause a problem. Food, toys, affection, the big three, you know. Those are, if a dog fight's going to happen, typically speaking, the places that you're going to see it is over something like that. Yep. Yeah, no, you're correct. Yeah, and past just that command, it's not even about which one is the most important. It really is just a matter of like, you know, if you look at the learning process of dogs, like you kind of have the initial shaping of things, then you kind of have the little bit of like the mental struggle phase of the dog connecting the dots and figuring out what's expected of them and stuff. And once I'm past that and they've kind of made that connection of like, oh, okay, cool, like I understand what this thing is, I want to have as much time for them to just be successful with it and do it over and over and over and over and over again correctly without the need of any sort of corrections or anything like that, to then build their confidence in that behavior and almost like tap into like an autopilot kind of state of mind where they're just doing it, right? Like bed, for example, like is, you know, we drill it so freaking much with the dogs, and I'm sure you see this as well with your dogs, obviously, where, you know, you just walk next to the bed and they're flying onto the thing, right? Because, yeah, they just kind of understand that visual position, right? So, you know, that's one thing that I find just slightly different than what I've seen with other trainers. Like when we've brought in other trainers before that have like worked for us, like at other companies and stuff, that's one thing they told us is like, okay, cool. Like in one set, like if they take a board and train out or a one-on-one class out to do a session, they'll work on like 3 different things in that entire session. And it's like this thing where it's like, okay, cool. We just got this hurdle with this bed stay, right? Then it's like, as soon as we get the hurdle with the bed stay, we're jumping into down stays. And it's like the dog's like, wait, I thought I just was under the impression that this was what I was supposed to do, but now we're switching to this, and it kind of just adds a little too much confusion in those early teaching stages, you know? So the actual training process, like I said, is pretty black and white. There's nothing too crazy or intricate about it. And I think, frankly, that's why a lot of people are really successful with training, because that's not the hardest part, obviously, right? It's when you get into a lot of the actually teaching dogs how to interact with their environment, or interact with dogs, or interact with people and stuff like that. And that's where, like I said, we've really put a lot of our attention on lately, because you figure most of these people that hire us, yes, they're hiring us because they want better control over their dog, and that's an important thing, obviously. But typically speaking, that's kind of like a sub-product of what they're actually trying to accomplish, which is they're having a massive problem with their dog understanding how to appropriately interact with something, right? Like, again, whether that's environmental, whether that's just they come to new places and they're scared of this thing over here, or they jump on this thing over there, whatever it may be, or it's people, they get uncomfortable and bark and don't know how to properly interact and stuff, or dogs, right? So we've really tried to isolate those specific problems a little bit more. So, but this is where you get into also passions with things, right? I love training dogs, obviously, but I realized pretty early on as well that I have a passion for teaching trainers, right? I really enjoy that side of things. I really like coaching people, and I don't know. Do you know? I mean, you're in California, so obviously. Do you know Michael Ellis at all? Are you familiar with Michael Ellis? Obviously, right. Have you listened to his most recent podcast he did with Ivan Balabanov? It's phenomenal. I definitely recommend listening to it. But yeah, so Michael, Ivan was asking Michael, how'd you get started in this? Where's your passion with things, this, that? And Michael basically said the same thing. He's like, I realized very early on, he was going around the country teaching seminars and stuff like that, and he kind of was at a point where he wanted to settle down and get a central location, and he had basically two options. He was like, I either could have started your traditional just training center and helped people, or I could have started a training school and helped people who ultimately would go out there and continue to help more dogs than I would be able to if I just had my own training center, right? So that really resonated with me a lot, because I started realizing we've experienced it where I could name a handful of trainers that used to work for me that I dedicated a lot of time into, a lot of money into, to get them kind of up to par with training abilities and stuff like that, who now are out there and have other training companies and are training dogs successfully. And though, my ego side of things sometimes is oh, they're competition, I want to always do better than them, this, that. I have a lot of respect for a majority of them and what they're doing, and that they're doing competent work. And I could trust that if somebody chooses to go with them over us, for the most part, they're going to get a really fantastic product still, because I know how they train. You know what I mean? In the end of the day, yes, I don't want to invest a bunch of time and money into somebody, and there's protocols you need to put in place. We recently had to update our non-compete contracts and employee handbooks and stuff like that, just because we are putting a lot of time and money into people here, obviously. But we want to help dogs. You know what I mean? That's the goal. And there's no lack of business, at least where we're at here, and I would assume out there as well, where if there's one more training center or two more training centers, that I'm suddenly going to go out of business from it or anything. We've built enough of a reputation at this point. You've clearly built enough of a reputation for yourself at this point. You know what I mean? Where if it happens, and you need to protect yourself, obviously, but that's reality, right? Is that some people are going to leave and want to start their own thing, and I don't know, the ones that do it successfully, hell yeah. But on the contrary, I think that some of the people that do think that they want to start a dog training business realize very quickly how much work it actually is, both from a physical workload standpoint and from an emotional work standpoint, right? I deal with some crazy situations, you know what I mean? Whether it's client situations, whether it's social media situations, whether it's whatever, you know what I mean? There's some crazy shit that I need to deal with that I think that a lot of people think that they can handle, but once they get into those situations, realize they actually can't, you know what I mean? And I hope that the people that are in our training center can at least see that and ask themselves that honest question of, is that something I want to deal with or not, right? So this number I'm calling you from right now, this is my cell phone number. Dude, I always tell everybody, like, once we've done our initial consult and stuff like that, if you ever have any questions about anything, just shoot me a text. I like to keep these relationships going. Like, obviously, a part of this industry, obviously, is, like I was saying, like, helping each other to continue to provide the best service we can. So, you know, just give me a buzz or give me a text if you ever need anything. Yeah, I think that's kind of your best bet, is you would want to look at a dog that actually does not have that kind of like want to bite mentality behind them, like you would get out of like a German Shepherd, right, or a Malinois, or like a Rottweiler or something like that, right? And I would just look,
or even any of the, or even for me, I was like, man, even like a cattle dog or any of those, like,
yeah.
Those are kind of, you know, they're bitey. Mm-hmm. They chase and bite.
Yeah, but because the goal here is, like, we're not looking to have a protection dog. We're looking to have a dog that is just going to be visually a little bit more intimidating. Yes, I would say that I would be looking at maybe just a larger breed dog that's not bred to bite, that's not bred to do protection sport and stuff, but is going to have a lot more energy behind them that might be intimidating to somebody. That's probably, in this type of situation, what I would be looking for.
Okay, so it's not ignorant for me to, like, think of that as, like, something that's possible.
No, because, again, like you said, like, the goal is not to teach this dog to be a protection dog. You know what I mean? The goal is just to have a dog that is going to be with us, that's going to be a little bit larger, and might possibly just scare somebody off from trying something, you know?
Okay, yeah, because I grew up with, like, Great Pyrenees as livestock guardian dogs. Uh-huh. It's just like, yeah, they kind of have one job.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you, Rocky is a good-ass dog. I like that dog. Boy. Did you like that? I sent that over. I was like reading it, and it's just like, does he have any issues with this? No. Does he have any issues with this? No. Does he have any issues with this? I was like, he's just a good boy. Yeah. He's just a good boy. Update. Chip is crushing it in his new home.
Aww.
Look at these pictures I just got. Here's Chip with his new brother. Can you see? Are you filming? Are you actually filming? Oh, okay, perfect, because you're a vlogger. You're filming. Okay. That's good. All right, so here's Chip with his new brother. See that? Mm-hmm. Here's Chip in the backyard with his new brother. Look at them.
They look so cute. He loves having a brother. It's everything he's ever wanted.
I sent her a text this morning just saying, how's Chip? She said, he's great. He and Duke play together constantly. Then they zonk out, then they wake up and play some more. Listens pretty well. He's a great dog. What else can you want?
I mean,
that's it. Listens pretty well. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be, he listens amazingly. He's the greatest, most well-behaved dog ever. No, he needs to listen pretty well. And honestly, if you're still filming, right? If everybody just adopted this mentality of, you know, listens pretty well is okay, right? Everybody would be a happier camper.
Oh, yeah.
Just listens pretty well. I love that.
There's things with my own dogs that, like, I really don't care about at all. Yeah. And then there's, like, probably 3 things that are important to me that I actually care about.
And as long as they listen pretty well with those things, the fuck?
Like, if people saw how I interacted with my dogs on a daily basis, they don't wait before they go outside in the backyard. I don't make them wait before I feed them. When I open their crates, they just zing right out.
Michelle's going all out here.
Honestly, though, like almost all of those things are the same with me, aside from the waiting for the food. I'm very strict about that with my dogs. But yeah, like when I get home, like I should film one day me getting home and letting my dogs out, like posting it. Because it's like I'm walking into the basement and Vinny's like, and Waffles is like, whoa! And then I just go and it's just like flick, 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 flick.
Yeah, they all just go crazy. I think the reason that like I don't care about the little things is because I'm confident that if a big thing happened.
The reason why we can get away with not, here, this is the secret. The reason why we can get away with not doing those things all the time is because we know with 100% certainty, if for whatever reason today was the day that I needed them all to wait in their crates when I opened the door, or I needed for all of them to wait at the back door before I let them into the backyard, or any of those types of things, that I could get them to do it still.
Yeah, it's not like I'm asking them and they're blowing me off. It's that I'm just not asking them to do it. If I ask them, they'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know what? They listen pretty well. He really thought he did. And then a couple of our clients went on there and they gave him the old pimp slap across the face and he shut the fuck up real fast out.
Lag on the table?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, the table's going crazy right now.
Sorry.
How many cuts do you have to take out of him asking, are you filming?
She just leaves him in at this point.
Yeah, I leave him in at this point.
Hi, is this Jessica?
This is Jessica.
Hey, how's it going? It's David with Miracle Canine Training.
Hi, David. How are you?
Wonderful. Just give me a call. I got your contact form. Looks like you got a couple of dogs you're looking for some training for.
Yeah, possibly. I'm not sure if training is going to fix the situation or not.
All right. What's going on?
So we have 3 dogs in total. They're all pit bull mixes. So 2 are lab mix, one's a rot pit mix. 2 were raised from puppies. 1 was adopted around the age of like 1 to 2. We've combined households, so we've moved in together. The dogs have known each other for over a year and a half now. Mm-hmm. But over that time span, my dog and one of his dogs have fought multiple times, like bad dog fights.
Well, here's the thing, right? So I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you like there's gonna be a magic solution that's gonna make this all perfect and better and rainbows and butterflies. But I will tell you that we have had quite a bit of success with cases like this before, and I think it's because we have a little bit of a different outlook on kind of resolving these types of issues, right? So typically we kind of have 2 sides of the equation when we're dealing with dogs that are getting into fights with each other, or particularly any dog that's having behavioral issues, right? So you have the dog side of things, then you have the human side of things, right? So first and foremost is we get into the human side of things of how do we set these dogs up for success? How do we make sure that we're not doing anything that's going to make these problems worse? How do we understand what types of situations are going to be appropriate to socialize them in versus not appropriate to socialize them in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? There's a decent amount of variables as far as how we manage stuff. The food bowl, prime example, right? Like, you guys are doing the right thing by trying to keep them separate, but the fact that there was an opportunity for these dogs both to be even licking the same bowl, like stuff like that can never happen. You know what I mean? Like whether it's, like even with my dogs, 9 out of 10 times, like they're just fed in their crates because it's just easiest. I don't have to worry about it, So there's the human variable of things of making sure problems aren't coming up, right? And then you have the dog side of things, which gets into the training, which gets into us getting them kind of out of this state of mind where they feel like they're like kind of so completely like in charge of, everything, frankly, that they compete so intensely with each other, And then the biggest variable being when we're socializing dogs that have issues with each other, right? It typically is not a matter of like the dogs are inherently really dog aggressive. Usually what it comes down to is these dogs haven't figured out their relationship with each other, and because we're scared of a problem happening or because we don't essentially set them up for success in how we're socializing them and stuff like that, we never allow them to figure out that relationship, right? Because even at this point, right, like that's why I was asking about the playing and I was asking about, some of the altercations and stuff that have happened. It sounds to me like these dogs have been able to be around each other. It's not like they've hit a point where like they're so grudgy that like on site they're trying to attack each other or anything.
Right. It's like months between fights. Yeah. That's the crazy part is it's out of the blue all the time.
Well, it's out of the blue, but it's not out of the blue, right? So the reason why I say that is because, we're able to go months in between these situations because we're looking at it from the standpoint of management, right? We're looking at it from the standpoint of like, we could manage all of these trigger points and all of this competition and stuff like that until we can't manage it, right? Until we miss something, until we screw up in a certain area, as opposed to solving the problem, right? And these dogs need to get past their problem that they have with each other, and they need to figure out their relationship with each other. And to some extent, we have to put them in a place where they're able to do that safely so they could work through their problem they have with each other so they can be past it, right? But unless we ever do that, we're stuck on management forever, which only works until it doesn't work. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
Good. So this is like Rocky's second day here. We're just getting a quick engagement session in with him. Okay, typically speaking, first couple days, anytime a board and train gets in, we're introducing the leash and prong. He came in on a leash and prong, so he's fairly used to it. He understands the pressure generally. Good. But we're starting to add some food into it. We're starting to add some motivation into it. Okay, and I want to see how I could start to get his attention around all of this other stuff. He's a pretty good dog. Good. But he's got a lot of impulse control issues he's struggling with at home. Okay, leash pulling things, jumping, getting into things he's not supposed to getting into. So, good. First step here is starting to gather that attention around all of this other stuff. Okay, so we could start like a little bit more of the formal learning process with him. Good. When I worked him yesterday, his food drive was relatively good like it is right now. Okay, and he would take it from me, but he was very scanning all over the place and stuff. Well, right now you see even the way that his body language is. Good. He's starting to shift that attention on to me. And all I'm doing right now, okay, is keeping my expectation to just sitting. That's it. Something really nice and simple. And as that engagement, good, continues to improve and get better, we'll start making it more challenging and adding some of our other commands into things. Nope. If he makes a mistake, we'll just help him back in. Okay. Again, you see as somebody's coming in, good. Engagement starts to shift away from us. So we're just looking to see him start to tune out some of these outside distractions a little bit more. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Now, engagement in general, okay, is a very overlooked / misunderstood concept with a lot of dogs. Good. To a lot of people, engagement means the dog physically looking at them or making eye contact, okay, or something that can only be accomplished through positive only training, or I shouldn't say positive only training, through positive reinforcement training and treat training. And good. Though that's a very effective means of getting it, obviously we're using food in order to get that. Engagement simply means, okay, that you are becoming valuable enough to the dog where they're choosing to put their attention onto you. Now that can come from, again, him really wanting something that it is that you have for him. In this case, the food, good. Or it could come in the form of the dog really, okay, wanting to avoid a consequence for not doing something. So when we were out walking him yesterday, because one of his major issues is leash walking and pulling on a leash, we were creating more firm consequences for him not keeping that attention on us without the use of food. And we can get into obviously my reasons for, good, not using a ton of food on the walk, obviously. But that in turn was also getting engagement. So by leveraging both sides of that spectrum, okay, we could tend to get really concrete engagement where the dog wants to do these types of things, good, but still understands that they have to do those types of things as well, so you get that real world reliability. Okay, and this looks pretty good. Good. Again, pretty good engagement to start. Okay. All right, so we're gonna take him outside real quick, take a look at his walk. Sit. Good. Come. Sit. Come. Sit. Come. All right, so just quick little walk with him. We're incorporating our 180 drill here into proofing those walking abilities. And right now I'm just looking to see again that I have his quote-unquote engagement here right now, that I have his attention on me. You'll see I'm very loose on the leash right now. And I'll be adding in those turns to make sure his attention stays in my direction. I started working on this when you were switching the microphone, obviously, upstairs. So you'll see, like, obviously when Bridget walked in, did you get that little clip of him moving away from her? I think you did, but I don't, maybe not. I could be mistaken. But basically we're working against distractions. So like an indoor setting, like Bridget's over here right now, we'll kind of simulate it. I would move towards a distraction, right? And if that attention left me, no, come. I would give that correction to redirect that focus back onto me in that moment. Same deal, obviously, we're moving towards distractions. And I would want to see, no, come. That he refocuses back on me. And this is the easiest drill you really could implement early on, obviously, with your dog. When you're working distraction work or trying to improve your leash skills. You know, obviously initially when we're introducing a prong collar, let's say he had never been on a prong in his life, which he's been on for quite a while. He's done some training with somebody else doing leash and prong work, which is why we're jumping right into a little bit harder of corrections for some of this kind of stuff. So you can see again, good, there you go, buddy. And obviously reinforcing when he does turn away from those, creating a little bit of energy behind it. Oh, tripping over him. Sorry, I'm getting in your way here. There we go, good job. So seeing that shift away from the distractions, obviously. Try one more here. Moving towards and away, good job, bud. So we're moving more quickly into some of those more firm corrections for kind of this stuff, because again, we've checked the box that he knows the general leash pressure work. If we were just starting off on a prong, we wouldn't be giving corrections for this and using quote unquote positive punishment. We would be using our negative reinforcement and shaping the initial heel position. So I would have the leash much shorter. I would just be focusing on if he gets out of position, guiding him back in, releasing pressure, guiding him back in, releasing pressure. But since he knows all of that already, we're proofing these commands as opposed to teaching them, which is where we implement our correction for that. Good job, bud. Very good. You know, we're playing the long game with some of these things, you know? Not that this is horrible. Like I said, I mean, like the fact that we're able to get him to sit and wait, the fact like he was able to wait in there with, you know, 2 other dogs coming through stuff. And, you know, he was excited, but like it wasn't completely uncontrollable or anything like that, is massive wins for a 1 session, you know? Alrighty. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting started with the e-collar here. So like we talked about last time, basically the way everything kind of progresses is session 1, we're introducing the prong collar, we're developing the muscle memory of some of these positions and stuff, but there's no real expectation that like real world this is going to be extremely reliable. We just want to make sure we could physically get them into these positions if we need to, obviously. From there we start layering the e-collar in, and this is really where we start to see everything come together a little bit, because this tool is going to be much more dynamic, where we can communicate a little bit more clearly and with a little bit more motivation to him. So I'm going to go ahead and get him fitted up with this, and then we'll start jumping into stuff. So basically the idea here is we're going to do everything we did last time, but instead of just using the leash, we're going to be pairing this pressure with that. So I'll be walking him around. Anytime he gets out of position, I'm going to apply pressure on the e-collar, apply pressure on the leash, and release both at the same time. So he starts to understand this means the same thing as this. So start walking around here and we'll get cruising with it. So pressure, release. Pressure, release. pressure, release. And a lot of times, like we did last time, I start off, release, with a little bit looser of an expectation than we had last time. So instead of starting right away with the heeling, I'm kind of starting with just kind of him staying within the realms of the leash. And again, in addition to that, keep in mind the prong collar in itself is not intended to be this tool that we're proofing behaviors with, you know? Like if we look at engagement, like what he's giving me where his attention is on me and he's staying focused and stuff like that, we were just talking about this before you got here, engagement comes from one of two things. Either the dog really wanting what you have for them or really wanting to avoid a consequence for doing something else, right? And in his case, because we don't have the food drive or anything like that, he's avoiding the consequence. That's the reason why he's doing it ultimately, right? But that will still achieve the same engagement, which once he starts doing it successfully and starts becoming more confident in that position, that's where you kind of see it really start to come together. Then you can kind of add the rewards and stuff back in since his food drive is more moderate with things and start to then create like more of a positive association with doing some of these things.
And then like if we're doing the stuff we were doing here today, still giving him treats when we stop and he stops.
Yeah, so the expectation is get it under control first. Like, don't be given rewards if he's all tuned out all over the place, right? But once he starts doing well with it, yeah, just periodically add your stop, good, reward. Then tell him to come, then add your stop, good, reward. So again, like I said, once we got past the hurdle, our job is to keep him as successful as possible and let him do it correctly to build his confidence in that position. So, looks great. Like I said, I'm pleased that he's not jumping into my face anymore. That's great.
Yeah, I used to do that for new people all the time. It's like,
really looks awesome.
Tell him no, you tell him down.
Yeah.
Next time he sees him, boom, right back.
Looks great though. He's doing really well. Today? Did you? Yes. Sweet. So here's the thing, right? So you have a couple components, right? So you have your obedience stuff that you need to go over with her, and then you have socialization related stuff. I would make it very clear that her first week is going to be primarily focusing on the obedience side of things with like, you know, 1 20 to 30 minute long social per day with them, right? But she's still gonna have them separate for the most part because she has to get her mechanics of communicating with them down before she could expect to be successful with them together, right? Any of their social time together for the first week is going to be on muzzle. Even if they're phenomenal, right? Even if it looks like they're trying to play with each other and stuff like that, I want it on muzzle just so we could, just like we did with them, just so we could put them in every possible scenario that could possibly start a fight and make sure it's not going to start one. You know what I mean? I would fully instruct her, and we've already kind of done this, but like really get into the details of like, what was I saying? Muzzle for the first time, first week, obviously. Oh yeah. I would like overly get into the details of like, yo, like the first time we put them together, they fought, right? And we let them fight. right? But get into the details of why. You know what I mean? Again, you get into the point, the reason why we put them in that position and allowed them to kind of safely, obviously, like duke it out for a minute and kind of figure it out is because we had to show them, one, you can communicate with each other, and by allowing them to communicate with each other in a controlled and safe way like that, what they realized is they didn't need to take it to that level of intensity to get their point across, which is why if you look at socialization from a spectrum, it went from really bad to not that bad to pretty neutral to really good, right? No amount of correcting this kind of stuff and everything will make it go from really bad to really good. They have to go through that spectrum to some extent. You know what I mean? And again, it's our job to facilitate that and make sure that it can be safe and make sure everybody ultimately comes out on the other side perfectly fine, right? The first handful of days that she does those socials, it's going to be just them without the other dogs. I don't care what they do individually with the other dogs, obviously, because that hasn't been an issue, obviously. But it's got to be just them until we see them hit a point where they're comfortable with each other and not trying to fight each other, obviously. And again, maybe they go home and they're fine. You know what I mean? Like it might just be fine, or maybe they'll see a little bit of squabbles here and there. We don't know, right? But we're kind of prepping her for the worst, hoping for the best, right? Once they hit that point where they're comfortable with each other, they're not trying to fight each other, we see that like through the muzzle, like almost kind of trying to interact and stuff like that, or at least staying neutral, then she could start adding the other dogs into the mix, right? And once she adds the other dogs into the mix, same deal, they're gonna be on muzzle, and you're gonna do that until we see like what we saw when we did that first social with them, with the other dogs on muzzle, where they were kind of trying to play with the other dogs and stuff like that. And then same deal, we're gonna let them be successful with that for a little bit. And the biggest thing I tell them is we'll kind of make some key points as far as like, this is the prerequisite for this, this is the prerequisite for this. Like you have to move through this order of things, and when you see this looks good, then you move on to this. Once that looks good, you move on to this. And then we say, okay, cool. This step number one may take not even a day, or it may take 4 days. You know what I mean? Step two may take a day, or it may take 5 days, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she's got to move through those steps at her comfort level, right? After that first week, right, we assess where we're at with things, and from there we start pushing those boundaries more, right? And I would let her know this is going to be a couple week process, maybe a month-long process once they get home, as far as getting you to the point where we're ending right now with stuff, you know? And then in that follow-up, you could start going over things like this, where we're working commands with them together and doing stuff like that, you know?
Boss it.